Hey folks, welcome to the Energy Sketch. I'm Michael Johnson. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to skip the meditation, go ahead and skip the little 1 minute or so from here. But for the rest of us, let's, just shake out the grungies a little bit. You know, all those grungy feelings that accumulate during the day. Always an opportunity to really get physical and start, rub your hands together a little bit. Feel the flow, feel the energy in your hands. Yeah, your hands are ultimately where the work happens, where the output comes from, where the flow really goes through your hands as we're crafting things. Often in the office, of course, it's tapping on the keyboard and moving a mouse, but otherwise we're doing creative things. We're playing music, we're doing art, we're painting, we're playing instruments, we're hitting things, we're building things. Yeah, our hands is where we build things. So take care of your hands and be well. And thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, let's jump right over to the whiteboard here. And I want to start by talking about one book that I've got a lot of value from that's by the author Dan Rome. And it's called Draw to Win. And there's some really nice concepts here around the simple elements that you need to know in order to draw concepts the way that I'm doing it here. And I'm not doing it particularly well here either. So it's really fun. It's really simple. These are the basic shapes that you need, right? A dot, a line. It can be a straight line or a wavy, curvy line. Arrow, square, or rectangle, of course. Triangle, circle, and the blob shape. Those are the essential basic shapes that we need, and they are all that we need, actually. And there are a few other books that I'll mention in later episodes where you can build these up into worlds and other things like that for another time. And what we can do with these, we can combine these in different ways to make objects. Like you want to draw a truck, well, you start with a rectangle. You add two circles, you add another rectangle at the front, maybe a little triangle, and you could draw some letters here. Acme, Acme truck. There we go. We've just made an object using our basic shapes. We can also draw people. Of course, stick people are a good thing, but also if you want to have more dynamic people, you can kind of have people with squares and rectangles, and they can be sort of moving. This person could be like fishing, right? There we go. There's somebody fishing. Or also like blob people are also kind of interesting to draw too. And again, you can have people of all different sort of sizes and shapes, a sort of hourglass figure, and you could maybe have different, legs kind of, you can imply kind of like movement or different positions like that. So simple way to draw lots of different types of people. And what else do we need when we're sketching concepts like this? Well, we need like charts. And I've shown this, I think, in the past. Yeah, I showed a chart last time on the happiness and the human index, but there we go. There's a chart. I mean, we're plotting, of course, variable y against variable x, and we may have some behavior there. We may have a dotted line here, and then this region in between we could highlight for different reasons. So simple drawing a chart with some squiggly lines and some letters, but these are going to be very valuable to us. Other things like maps. I mean, you might have some region here with a road going over to another sort of region here, and there's sort of different ways to get from one region to the other, and you might, hatch in this part of it here associated to this part of it here, and highlight maybe things on the map like danger here, or caution over here. These symbols might mean something. So these are sort of, you can draw maps, which is again just a combination of squiggly lines and shapes and characters. And the other things we might need are things like a timeline. So you can imagine time really on the axis here, and it's sort of similar to the chart, but we could imagine a flow of information, and you could have sort of like swim lanes, like person A, person B, team C, team D. Okay, they're running it, and then they give it over to person C, and they run it for a while, and then it gets spread to everybody, and then we're marching forward, and these symbols would ultimately maybe, of course, have some meaning, but here there's a kind of a decision gate, and this person continues, and then it flows down to here. So this is kind of a timeline idea, and that can be adapted for any scenario that you want to sketch. And the other thing we can sketch using a combination of really shapes and arrows is some sort of, flow chart. And these symbols might have different meanings. Maybe you have a diamond for a kind of a yes, no. Okay, yes, you go back here. No, you go back here. And then this has maybe multiple outputs. This one comes here. This one comes here. Another process happens here. This output goes to another process, which then, let's say, combines with the output from this process into another decision gate. So this is, again, I'm just making up random stuff here, but starting from these simple shapes here, the dot, the line, the straight line, the squiggly line, the arrow, square, circle, triangle, and blob, we can create everything that we might ever need to sketch in order to effectively and powerfully communicate some different concepts. So that's the book Dan Rome, Draw to Win, which I really enjoyed and really brought a lot of value for me. Okay, that was just a little intro and a few ideas on using really super simple shapes to communicate ideas in a way that anyone can sketch these. You don't need any artistic ability. Anyone can draw these super simple shapes and combine them together in ways that you can communicate concepts to the people around you and ultimately make a difference in simple communication. So now let's jump back to the whiteboard for a new segment called hashtag a modest proposal. So the modest proposal for today is around a situation in Canada where, right, this is British Columbia, Alberta, and Quebec over here. So we have like, natural gas production here in Alberta, oil and gas production. And there's various projects around the country. One of them was proposed here for LNG, bringing LNG to Saguenay by pipeline and ultimately to be liquefied here in Saguenay using hydropower and then ultimately shipped out by boat. This project was stopped at the consultation phase. I don't know exactly when, at what phase it was stopped. But there's other projects that are going on. So there's also Coastal GasLink going to Kitimat, where there will be LNG produced, and that will be shipped for export. There's something else that I wanted to bring in, and this is the nature of the modest proposal. Over here in Quebec, we mine a fair bit of iron ore. So there's iron ore that's, shipped out here by ship to be reduced elsewhere. Iron today is produced mostly from reduction with metallurgical coal, which produces something like 1.9 tons of CO2 for every ton of iron that's produced. So there's actually a significant, I believe, scope 3 emissions from the processing of this iron ore abroad. And we don't hear much about this. And in a future episode, I will calculate the numbers here for the scope 3 emissions associated with the reduction of the iron ore that is mined in Canada. And there's a few other themes there for me that are interesting. The idea of sort of historically Canada as like a producer of raw resources, like raw timber that we simply export for processing elsewhere. And this is along the lines of, we're not adding really enough value add to our raw resources that are exported. So my modest proposal really is perhaps we could Well, instead of shipping LNG from here, bring the natural gas to the site of the iron ore production, and then use some new technology that I heard about, Aurora Hydrogen, a startup company that's making a methane pyrolysis system. It's basically like a reactor. It takes in methane, natural gas, CH4, as well as electricity, and it uses that electricity in microwaves inside this reactor to basically produce a stream of hydrogen and solid pellets of carbon in solid form. So carbon solid. So we hear a lot about this idea of carbon sequestration, which is great if you have geology around you to do that, to put the gas back underground. And they do have some geology that's appropriate for that. Here in Alberta, there are some wells and there's some projects of CO2 pipelines and stuff like that. But this is super interesting that this could be done where you don't have that geology. So imagine that we installed some kind of this Aurora hydrogen methane pyrolysis system up here near where the iron ore is produced, and actually added value to it using Quebec hydropower or additional wind or solar power, reducing this into hydrogen. And you can use these carbon pellets in industry, in concrete, as filler material, in other uses there. So there's something interesting around this new technology that could really be beneficial. Or the other way would be, instead of sending the gas, I mean, we've got rail lines in this country. I mean, this country was built on rail, right? So imagine that we instead send trains of iron ore across the country over to Alberta to be reduced back into iron, and then perhaps shipped out here. We could be sending out pure iron, pure steel, reduced either with natural gas here in Alberta, or eventually with abundant solar and wind power resources here in Alberta. I think there's a meeting of the needs and an additional value add that could be brought through this modest proposal. So thanks for considering my modest proposal of adding value to the Canadian iron ore exports by upgrading them into iron, clean green iron, using either pyrolyzed natural gas and eventually green hydrogen generated from abundant solar and wind resources. Okay, folks, thanks so much for tuning in to the Energy Sketch today. I hope you got some inspiration about how you might start sketching some concepts with those simple shapes. Marks with meaning, as I heard it referred to once. Simple shapes that you can combine to really communicate concepts. And I hope you appreciated my modest proposal, and we'll work up the numbers for these things in future episodes. But for now, it's just an idea, it's just a sketch. And I hope you enjoyed it. So tune in next time, 12 p.m. on Mondays on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in to the Energy Sketch. Toodaloo!